Hello everyone, my name is Lowko, and today it is time for a professional match of Terran versus Zerg. Spawning here in the southeast corner of Cairo's Junction Alley and playing with the red Zerg drones. We have none other than Reynor. And his opponent spawning in the opposite corner, playing with the blue Terran SCVs. We are looking inside of the main base of Gumhio. Now, for those of you that have been watching this channel for a little while, you know that I'm a big fan of both of these players. For example, when it comes to Reynor's playstyle, I'm a big fan of the amount of counterattacks that he executes. When he's up with his back against the wall, oftentimes he will still figure out a way to do some counterattack damage. He finds the units, he finds the army, he finds the APM as well to do a push, and it's really scary because if you don't cover all of your tracks, if you're a Terran player, you are pretty much guaranteed to get Zerglings into your base. Now, what I really enjoy about Gumihio's playstyle, outside of him being just an excellent top-level Terran player, is how he seems to be a couple steps ahead of the current meta. You know how, like, for example, a lot of Terran players at the highest level love going for that mass Cyclone army right now? Well, that's one of the things that Gumhio was playing over a year ago. He has been playing that style for much longer than other top Terran players have, and he always seems to be one step ahead of everyone else. And I am a big fan of that, you know, just mindset. I think it's really cool. He's always trying to explore new strategies. For example, right now, right, a lot of Terran players get stuck on that Cyclone style. They don't really transition in time. Gumhio has been transitioning towards Mass Liberator and then just all-out Terran air with battle cruisers and everything else if he has the option. And I really enjoy watching that. I think it's super good. Anyways, we'll see where this game is going to take us. Should be a really awesome match though. So Reynor actually going for what Zerg players consider the Clash Zerg versus Terran build order. This is one of the builds that a lot of the Clash Zergs like to play. Basically, you go hatch gas pool, so you go 16 hatch, 18 gas, 17 spawning pool. And then once you reach 60 gas, rather than 100, you pull 2 drones out. And what it allows you to do is get this third base up before the Reaper can arrive, which is really clever. And then as long as you start up Zergling speed right when you reach 100 gas, you should be able to get link speed done before 4 Hellions can make their way towards your side of the map. So right now, Reynor is sitting at 100 gas. He needs to start up link speed actually. It's really critical you do that immediately. There you go. Because otherwise the Hellions can be a massive amount of trouble. So this is one of the recent developments in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. You basically delay your second Overlord for quite some time until after the third hatch is already started. I really like it. I think it's very strong. In the meantime though, on the side of Terran, Gumhio, he decided to go for like a Protoss-like wall, right? This is what Protoss players love to do against Zerg especially. They obviously go for the pylon on the low ground and then they follow it up with a couple structures. That's basically what Gumhio is doing right now as well, though it does make him just a little bit more vulnerable. He's also now following this up actually, there it is, with a really quick armory. That armory could actually spell disaster because it allows Gumhio to transform those Hellions into Hellbats here as well. And I guess with the Zergling speed starting up just a little late, right? Just a couple seconds, and the Hellions moving across the map just a little bit quicker rather than from that ramp, this could actually be pretty tricky for our Zerg player to deal with, because Reynor, at this point, does not have link speed just yet. He's getting himself a couple of links right now, going up to 8, or I guess now 10 in total. But here's the 4th Hellion already, or I guess the 3rd and the 4th already arriving. And with some excellent micro there, Gumhio picks up the kill on one of those queens. A second Hellion, or by the way, a second Reaper joining the fray there as well. Great target firing there by Reynor. He does manage to get the kill, but still, he is in a lot of trouble because the armory is done. If Gumhio wants to right now, he's actually being rather patient with that. He can morph these Hellions into Hellbats, and it makes it a very scary position here for our Zerg player. Reynor actually droning, so he's completely unexpecting this push. And that means that I think these Hellbats are gonna be able to deal quite a bit of damage. Wonderful early game here by Gumhio, taking control of the early game, showing Reynor that he knows what it is he's doing, and he's just countering it really nicely. Wonderful play there by our Terran player in blue. Alright, so how exactly are you gonna clean this up? Well, usually Zerg players will just bleed in units and then pick up these Hellbats eventually, right? You see them all running very low. They can be healed up, they can be repaired, but There's currently no medevacs, no SCVs nearby, so Gumhio will likely end up losing all of these units here eventually. But obviously, this is during a time frame in the game where Zerg players want to be making drones. They don't want to be making army units right now. They want to be making drones. And another queen, ooh, being caught right there in front of the of a friend, I suppose. She also ends up getting roasted. Alrighty. So where are we going to go from here? Gumhio is transitioning towards a second factory, third factory here, as well as a third command center. So he is indeed going for what seems to be a Cyclone-based playstyle. In the meantime, though, on the side of Zerg, Reynor did make a couple of drones, but he's actually following this up right now with mostly just roaches. So I think he's planning to get really aggressive. This is now being confirmed, though, here by Gumiho. He's scanning, and he knows, well, let me get some vision here. He knows right now that there are more gases being taken by Reynor, and at this point in the game, after that early game, I think that he probably is going to be able to put one-on-one together and recognize exactly what's going on. A couple bunkers are being produced here. Even Marines now on that production tab. Gumhio is going for siege tanks. He's getting himself that upgrade here, right here, for the Cyclones. Oh, man, I think he's in a phenomenal spot, right? Look at the units that are moving across right now. There's a couple of Ravagers coming up. Hellions will be able to confirm exactly when this army will be able to arrive. So, well, you're already spotted here, Reynor. You can try and get cheeky, but you're already spotted, and well, Gumhio is going to be the one who's forced to defend this very aggressive push. So the siege tanks actually backing up. I love this. Gumhio putting the siege tanks as far away as possible. There's no high ground vision, so Reynor is not really going to be able to do any damage to that one on the high ground. He's going to try and go after the tech lab over here. Tech lab actually taking a lot of damage, and that does indeed deny the MECH field accelerator upgrade, which is great for Cyclones especially. But does Reynor want to commit here? Yeah, Zerglings already made their way back home as well. I don't think he wants to get too aggressive. He will be able to force the liftoff right here on that orbital command, but I think this is the correct call, though, for Reynor to just simply not even try, because headbutting with this many Terran units and then these many defensives, like, you're not gonna be able to get anything done. So I actually like the fact that he decided to back up here, but it does put him in a pretty awkward position. There's actually a medevac moving across the map. The links are moving out right now. There's 4 Hellions inside of this medevac. Keep in mind, they can move into Hellbats very easily and then be healed back up by this medevac as well. They are gonna drop out below, and Gumhio is actually trying to bait some of those units towards the Terran mineral lines. He does manage to successfully pull that trick off, and Gumhio gets into the mineral line. He kills 5 drones there immediately, and he's forcing most of those Zerg units to right now go back home as well. The Hellbats, though, are now also cleaning up some of those units on the other side of the map, and while indeed Lings will be roasted as well, I think that Gumhio is going to be very satisfied with his early game play. So now that there's a couple of siege tanks out, I think that Gumhio could start up the transition towards more Cyclones. That's kind of the thing that you need, right? You need some of those siege tanks out just in case your opponent gets really aggressive. If you manage to do exactly that, you're going to be in a great position when you do get the Cyclones out, because not only are you going to be able to deal a little bit of pressure, you're also going to be defensive at home. With this many tanks, I mean, good luck breaking that if you're Zerg, right? Although these tanks are really clumped up together. This is a pretty risky position right now to be in if you, to engage. Actually, hold that thought. A lot of those siege tanks are actually surrounded right now with Zerglings that came in from the north. Reynor trying to get up a 6 around. He manages to deal a lot of damage to a couple of those tanks who were really clumped up. And somehow, some way, Reynor seems to be able to make this work. That was such a good trade considering the amount of units that he made. Oftentimes, a lot of Zerg players would just sort of sit with them on their side of the map. That was such a ballsy maneuver there, though. Gumhio obviously leaving units behind here, right? Trying to get some defenses inside of his main and natural as well. Reynor looked at it, and he made the decision to run the links from the north and get this around there on the tanks, cleaning up a lot of that. So even though the unit's loss step right there is still heavily in favor of Terran, I do think it sort of equalized some of the damages dealt here by Gumhio in the early game. Once again, though, continued Hellbat and Hellion pressure. Eventually, this will all be cleaned up, but Gumhio is keeping very strict control on this Zerg player, right? Usually after that little bit of aggression goes down, Zerg players want to like heavily drone up, and while Reynor is trying to do exactly that, he is still not even at 80 drones yet, and we are already 9.5 minutes or so into this game. Alright, let me take a sip of water. Oh, man. This is great, though. I love this. Very high-level moves. Love the way that Gumhio is playing this especially, although, well, hold that thought, because Reynor just set up a surround off creep in the middle of the map. He caught a lot of these very low hit point Terran units, and sure, you can lock onto a couple links, but I don't think that Reynor really cares right now. So we actually see Banshees as a follow-up right here as well for Terran. Haven't really seen that all too much. There's a single Raven already out as well. Anti-armor missile will be hitting pretty much all of these Zerg units. That means that those tanks from a distance can shell away and deal way more damage to these Roaches and Ravages than they normally are going to be able to. But does Reynor care? He is moving forward anyways. Even though all of his units are painted in a beautiful shade of orange, he is still smelling blood. He knows his units don't have a lot of armor to begin with. So what about you just push and try and make the most of it? Reynor actually with a very close call. He decides to push forward there and break into the Terran's natural. At the same time, we see a couple of Cyclones and Hellions making their way towards the third base. That also will be deflected. And even though Reynor was in a really big disadvantage here in the early game, he has now somehow, some way turned the tables in favor of the Swarm. Wonderful move there by our Zerg player. And now with the Swarm host follow-up as well, I think Reynor is smelling blood in the water. He wants to clean this game up right here, right now. Still needs to be careful though. He's sort of bleeding in units right now into those siege tank lines. Not really what you want to do, obviously. Wait, the Banshee, did it go down? Did the Banshee go down? Oh my god, I think it got biled down. No way. I was gonna say, there's no way that that is gonna happen, but apparently it did. And that means that, that eventually Terran should, well, normally you can clean it up if you have Banshees, right? But eventually, I think that Terran might be in a lot of trouble right now. Couple of Roaches over at the third base as well. They will be killed by SCVs there eventually, but look at the amount of Cyclone damage here as well. I feel like I said the word eventually like 14 times just now. But eventually, okay, Gumhio did manage to push back that army, but not without losing a very substantial amount of army, as well as SCVs, and then also that supply. There we go. We do see more Banshees now coming up for Gumhio, so he's not done just yet. We have a bit of back and forth action once again. Reynor trying to set up the surround. Cyclones are very strong, but they are also very low in hit points. And with some solid target firing right there, Reynor picks up a couple of them once again. I love the Raven right now, though. The Raven definitely, you know, is granting a lot more vision here for Gumhio. Makes it easier for this Terran player to spot where those Zerg units are located. Gumhio trying to bait the lock-on right there, and he is going to be able to get rid of those little locusts just fine. Once again, though, Gumhio not done just yet here with the counterattack aggression. I mean, I mentioned earlier, right, that it usually is Reynor who's known for that counterattack damage, but man, are these Hellions annoying. Look at that. Woo! How many drones did he kill so far? 30! It's just a couple here and there. Well, I guess that little bit of counterattack pressure, though, from Reynor certainly also did deal a bunch of damage there to Gumhio, and it's very obvious in the supply count. Now, a lot of that Zerg supply, though, is at the bottom side of the map. Needs to be careful. It takes these Cyclones, like, 2 seconds to kill this hatchery, okay? With the creep actually being halted as much as it is, it's going to be hard for Reynor to anticipate that kind of movement. He is now transitioning towards the Hive as well as the Hydralisks. So I think he is planning to go for Hydras and Vipers here eventually, which is what we saw a lot of the Korean Zerg players use to deal with this Cyclone-based composition. But look, these Hellions, man, these Cyclones, they are not going to let these Roaches escape. And that's a lot of lost supply there for our Zerg player. Certainly evening up a lot of that supply that we saw heavily in favor of Zerg just now. Keep in mind, though, this supply is also caught up in Swarm Host. How many are there right now? It's only 6 of them, so it's really not that much. But yeah, it is important to keep that in mind, because Swarm Host, while they can deal a lot of damage, they also soak up a ton of that supply, and sometimes they make it look as if the army is heavily in favor of Zerg, when in reality it really isn't. Once again, though, a counterattack here with Roaches on the others. Look at this counterattack pressure, right? Like, he's in so much trouble here on his side of the map, and somehow, some way, Reynor finds the time, as well as the energy, to move across. Well, not successful this time around, though. And with this many Zerg units falling left and right, Gumhio is still sharking in towards this hatchery on the right-hand side. This hatchery, there's still very little creep spread going from it. This hatchery, you just need to look at it once if you're in range with the Cyclones, and it's gone. With this many Cyclones, for sure. Gumhio, though, forcing this army to be positioned right now on the northern end. he immediately cycles towards this location here instead, and he's forcing the Zerg player to make a choice. Where do you want to defend? There's Hellions waiting with the run-by here as well in the top right-hand corner, waiting for the Zerg army to be forced in that direction. And now that they are, the Hellions swoop in, and Gumhio is looking to roast a couple more of those drones. Oh, looks like there's a Zerg barbecue, right? Gumhio organizing that barbecue. At the same time, though, the Cyclones taking the high ground advantage right here as well. I think we've all seen Star Wars, right? We know exactly what's going to happen when you have the high ground. Well, it apparently means that the Hellions are going to be able to roast some of your drones. That's what's going on. And in the blink of an eye, 22 drones end up going down here as well. There were some units here with a counterattack push, but Gumhio cleaned that up with his own reinforcements too. So Reynor is certainly the one who managed to get himself into a wonderful position. He's still certainly in a great spot as well. Don't get me wrong. He's still got a really strong unit composition. But even though it was Gumhio who was ahead in the early game, then Reynor who got ahead after that, I think that Gumhio is sharking around with an army here wonderfully. And he's really starting to get back into this match greatly. Now, just like with the 4th base, right? The same can happen to the Hive. A little bit of damage there was done by our Terran player, but you can see, even in just that like 2-second window, like a third or so of the hit points of the Hive are gone. And obviously there's less hit points on a hatchery, so that's, yeah, pretty scary. Especially now with the Vipers also using it to soak up some energy. If Gumhio gets the opportunity, I think he's going to try and see if he can get back in there as well. No transitions, by the way, just yet from Gumhio. He has just been going 1 attack upgrade and then 2 armor upgrades as well, obviously prioritizing the armor upgrade. He actually loaded up the Blue Flame Hellbats inside of these Medivacs as well. I think considering this Zerg army is very Hydra focused, he's probably going to try and see if he can drop them on this as well. There we go though, Abductor coming up, and this is what we've seen a lot of Terran players lose with. Here we go, big boost forward actually on so many of those Medivacs. The Medivacs actually drop on the Hydras and a lot of them get roasted in the blink of an eye. Gumhio wants to see if it can deal some pressure here. And this Zerg army, man, I like the addition of the Swarm Host, but it feels kind of scary to play the Swarm Host without like Infestor support or something like that, right? To just keep the units in place. I'm a big fan of the Mass Hydra Viper style, but obviously it's difficult to go ahead and do so. Reynor just barely dodging the army there. Gumhio smelling blood. He may actually try and see if he can pick up that Hive here as well. I mean, the Zerg army in the meantime is preoccupied on the other side of the map, and I think that means that the Hive is going to be in a lot of trouble. That will shut down a lot of the production here of our Zerg player. At the same time, we see a big counterattack here from Reynor, but it will be cleaned up with those Hellbats inside of the Medivacs here as well. And while there was also some Zerg aggression over at this base at the north, that one also got deflected really wonderfully by Gumhio. And Gumhio, man, this guy is good with Cyclones, right? Come on, man. Some people say this Cyclone style is easy. Well, good luck playing it the way that Gumhio is. Like, it's ridiculously tricky. I really want to emphasize, the Cyclones cost about the amount that a siege tank cost, okay? This it's a little cheaper, but it's like, it's not a cheap unit by any stretch, and they die so easily, right? You don't want to lose your siege tanks, everyone knows that. Yet, you don't want to be expendable with your Cyclones either. I love the fact that he decided to mix in Medivacs right here with Hellbats. I think that's like a new addition to this style. I haven't seen him do that before. Hive is, by the way, gone. Is there even a lair right now? There's not even a lair. Reynor, while still maxed out and with a very scary army, he needs to be careful. Once again, the boost right there of those Medivacs, zoning away that Zerg army here for the time being, and that means the hatchery right here, the one that I expected would fall ages ago, is gonna get picked off here as well. Gumhio picking up 26 drone kills right there too, and he is feeling confident. I mean, I like it whenever Terran players transition from here, right? But I don't even know if he needs to. Gumhio is looking to finish this game on just Mass Cyclone alone. And in the meantime, though, of course, Reynor going in with the counterattack, dealing damage right here as well. 22 SCVs are killed. And while he did lose one of his bases at home, and I think a second hatchery might go down as well, he actually did deal quite a substantial amount of damage. Still, though, Gumhio just secured another base, and that one I don't think is scouted yet. No, Reynor doesn't know about this base, so Gumhio can continuously mine here for a little while longer. At the same time, while the Zerg army is caught out on the map, we see the Hellbats once again dropping on the Hydras, and they are taking A whole bunch of those Hellbat shots. Hellbats, they're disposable. They cost minerals. You got plenty of minerals when you play mech. It's the Cyclones that you want to keep alive. And if you can use the Hellbats for tanking right there, as well as a stupid amount of damage on the Hydras, you're gonna be in a great spot. Gumhio checking if the base right here at the bottom section of the map was taken as well. And even though Reynor certainly clawed his way back into the game, when Gumhio realized, okay, there's nothing here, he must have been feeling pretty good with himself because he just dismantled a top-tier Zerg. I hope you enjoyed watching this game. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as I upload more. A special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you once again in the next one.